because he's the acceptable monster at this time, like R. Kelly was the last time I sat on this couch. Jay-Z is setting Diddy up.
People even calling me, asking me about him, you know, and I don't know him from a can of paint. He even mentioned my name, saying that I know. I know what I know. I don't know what he knows, but I do know this. And it seems to make a lot of people upset, you know, but then a lot of people love my opinion. That's why you bring me on here. And I really appreciate that, brother. I just want to say this before we get started, Art, is that, you know, a lot of people think I came here to bring a black man down. And that's what I hear in the comments a whole lot. But it was nothing like that. You know, a black man didn't cuss a dead man's mother out. A black man didn't set his friends up and put them in a situation where they couldn't come home to their families no more. A black man didn't reach back and help the people that helped them make it up the ladder. It was Puffy. You know what I'm saying? I got tired of Puffy going on different platforms talking about how he loved the people that we was all with, how he loved the people that helped him, when in fact, none of that stuff was true. So my whole thing about it is, man, I appreciate your platform for letting me, you know, voice my opinion. And like I said, opinions like an asshole. Some of these cats out here get paid for their asshole. I get paid to give my opinion.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I mean, yeah, you just on here giving your opinion, man. I mean, you was one of the people that was real close to the situation, so why not?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So with that being said, right, the last interview me and you did was a day after the raid. And when you look at everything now, man, how you feel about everything? It's been like a week, you know, you knowing Diddy, you being around Diddy. Could you ever imagine that his houses would get raided for sex trafficking?
Bruh, you can't imagine no stuff like that. You understand? You can't think that, because back then, he wasn't Brother Love. He was Puffy. All the way up until he became Diddy. So his behavior over the years
built a whole world around being cool, collected, always in control.
Yeah, the absolute last person you'd picture kind of losing it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, bam, it happens.
Yeah.
Right out there, everyone watching.
It was definitely a moment, really cut through the noise, didn't it? Surprised pretty much everybody.
No kidding.
And this material you sent over these articles, notes, different accounts, it really gives us a chance to dig into what might be going on beneath the surface, behind that that public display.
Right.
So our mission here is to kind of unpack the key bits, the really surprising details, and, you know, the insights that your sources are laying out about this whole thing and the buzz around it.
Absolutely. Because seeing someone like Jay-Z, I mean, showing that kind of raw emotion in public, when his whole image is usually so buttoned up, just grabbed everyone. Felt so unexpected, almost out of character, you know?
Totally.
And the material really focuses on that moment, the shock of seeing that mask just for a second kind of slip.
And what jumps out, like, right away in the material is this idea that this wasn't just, you know, a random bad day.
Right.
There's a view in these sources that suggests something much deeper is happening, maybe like immense pressure building up over time and finally just spilling over.
And when that moment actually hit the internet, oh man.
Yeah.
The reaction described in the material anyway was just explosive. Social media just melted down. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, totally flooded.
Wow.
You've even had celebs mentioned in the material, like Diddy, Rihanna, Kanye, apparently showing support, which just added fuel to the fire.
So it became a huge thing instantly.
Huge. Some folks were shocked. Others were like, is this real? But the sources make it clear. That moment became an immediate cultural flashpoint, no question.
Okay, so moving into maybe the why behind it, at least according to the material. There's a really significant link drawn in these sources to the whole Diddy situation.
Right. The Diddy controversy.
Yeah. One perspective in there is pretty forceful, claiming Jay-Z is somehow involved in setting Diddy up.
Setting him up.
That's the phrase used. Even calling Diddy the acceptable monster in this whole scenario, drawing parallels to, like, other industry situations from the past.
And the specific stuff about Diddy in this material,
Yeah.
it's pretty rough. Very negative claims.
Like what?
Well, the sources allege Diddy has a history of cussing out the mother of a man who had died, setting up his own friends, not helping people who, helped get started. The vibe from the source material is that the person sharing this feels totally disillusioned with Diddy, sees any public loyalty displays as, well, basically fake, based on what they claim to know.
Okay.
And just to be super clear, we're just laying out what's in your source material here.
Yeah.
Not saying any of this is verified fact.
Understood. And from there, this collection of sources just kind of branches out, right?
Yeah.
Into other really serious, sometimes pretty disturbing allegations and theories.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, one point raised is this theory about the death of a woman named Kathy White,
Kathy was.
described in the material as Jay-Z's pregnant mistress, who supposedly died from what the source dismissively calls an imaginary aneurysm.
Wow, imaginary aneurysm. That's quite a claim.
It is, and it's linked to another theory about the author of a book, Bling and Die. The material claims this author died soon after the book hit the bestseller list. And that book apparently belonged to a friend of Kim and Kimura.
So these sources are painting a picture of, well, deep industry darkness.
More than that, yeah. It suggests this widespread corruption. Like, you can't go to the top because they're in on it. You can't go to the cops because the claim is they're bought and paid for.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Bought and paid for.
That's the quote from the material. It even claims trying to get a special prosecutor involved is useless because they'd just get bribed and moved off the case.
So the source feels like they had to handle things themselves.
Seems like it. There's a quote in there like, I go to Diddy parties to walk mother out because ain't nobody stopping me. A sense of taking direct action because the system, according to them, is broken. Okay, that's a lot. And then there are the claims about Jay-Z himself.
Yes, and these are very explicit. The material contains claims about Jay-Z having relationships with underage individuals back in the 90s.
Underage.
Stating it was presented almost like a common thing back then. It specifically brings up Aaliyah. There's even a picture included, supposedly showing Jay-Z with her, when the source claims she was underage.
But usually you hear Damon Dash or R. Kelly linked with Aaliyah.
Right, and the source acknowledges those names, but claims Jay-Z was also involved, and not the only other one. Foxy Brown is mentioned too, noted as being very young during her work with Jay-Z. The person behind this material reflects that they personally weren't into that, but claims, and this is a direct quote again, that everyone they fucked with did.
Goodness. And Aaliyah's death. Does the material touch on that?
It does. Offers a specific narrative. Describes her rushing back to be with Damon Dash, getting on a plane the material claims was overloaded.
Overloaded. Yeah, and mentions trying to bribe officials in the Bahamas to, like, speed things up. Contrasts it with Mexico, where bribing was apparently harder. It just throws a lot of names around in this whole section. Claudia Jordan, Corey, who they identify as Kathy White, Jack, R. Kelly, Janet Jackson, even members of DeBarge.
Okay, again, just reporting what's in the documents you provided us. These are some heavy claims.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
Which brings us back maybe to that idea of pressure you mentioned earlier.
Right, the pressure on Jay-Z. The source material really emphasizes his background, coming from Marcy Projects, the constant fight to build the empire, keep it, stay relevant.
Yeah, it suggests that kind of pressure, that fight or flight mode, maybe never really leaves you no matter how successful you get, that the stress is just immense.
And the material connects this current moment to past stuff, right?
Yeah.
Talks about crack, stress, strain, those public marriage rumors.
And it explicitly points to the infamous elevator moment with Solange.
Ah, yes, the elevator.
Yeah, calling it just the tip of the iceberg. Implying, according to this material, that these tensions, these issues, have been simmering under that calm exterior for a very, very long time.
And then there's the focus on Beyonce in the material too, the pressure she's under.
Yeah, it acknowledges that. Being in her world means, like, constant performance, managing this huge global thing, 3 kids, the whole world watching every single step.
It sounds exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. The material suggests there's zero room for error, for vulnerability. It's like needing superhuman strength all the time. But, even the strongest people have limits. Maybe what people saw was just years of that strain finally showing.
The material also mentions that song, Stand By Your Man.
It does, yeah. It brings it up when talking about the marriage context.
Okay, and speaking of Beyonce.
Yeah.
This is where the source material gets extremely negative and frankly, quite shocking.
How so?
Well, again, critical estate. We are reading directly from the content you provided. We are absolutely not endorsing these views.
Got it. Presenting the source content.
Exactly. The material uses phrases like Beyonce's internet that belonged to the devil, calls her nothing but employee, and uses some really, really harsh derogatory language.
Wow, okay.
It includes claims she was involved in harming animals, specifically killed the girl cats, snacking on his bed, killing people cats. It alleges she was charged with extreme witchcraft.
Witchcraft? Seriously?
That's what's written here. Claims she was hypnotized, drugged, and was eating on her, referencing a specific woman while that woman was asleep.
Eating on her? What does that even mean in this context?
The source doesn't elaborate on the phrase, but the context is clearly abusive or predatory. It also claims this woman tried to get a restraining order against Beyonce, but was denied, just told to stay away and find work somewhere else. And that now this woman, described as a brilliant musician in the source, is struggling.
Those are incredibly serious and bizarre allegations, found solely within this source material you're analyzing.
Solely within this material, yes. It's quite disturbing content.
Definitely. Okay, so shifting gears a bit. The material you sent also has other points, right? Things that seem maybe less directly connected but give a broader picture.
Yeah, exactly. Other tangents, other grievances from the source speaker's perspective.
Like what?
Well, there's a whole bit about Michael Bivins and Boys the Second Men.
Oh, Biv from New Edition.
Yeah. The material claims Bivins basically fucked over Boys the Second Men. Suggests it came from his own tough time as a kid star in New Edition, like he decided, okay, I'll find talented guys and do the same to them.
That's a cynical take.
Very. And it gets specific about Big Mike from the group, claiming he ended up in really bad financial shape, especially after his wife's soul food restaurant didn't make it.
Oh, wow.
The material is pretty brutal about the restaurant, too, mentioning things like waiting 6 hours for a turkey wing platter, and claims their house had termites and serious structural problems.
Jeez, and is there a connection made there?
Well, the source connects it to Jill Scott.
Jill Scott. How? It alleges that Jill Scott knew Big Mike was struggling financially, possibly facing foreclosure, and basically took advantage.
Took advantage how?
Claiming she bought their house super cheap, way under market value, in a, quote, white Jewish neighborhood, basically squeezing them when they were down, according to this source, presented as like another example of how people get exploited in the industry.
Okay. What other tangents are in there?
There's a theory that Jay-Z paid to have Killer Mike arrested right after he swept the Grammys.
To ruin his big night.
That's the implication in the source, yeah. Sabotage. Also a claim that Damon Dash got fucked over by someone he thought was a close friend.
Seems like a recurring theme of betrayal in this material.
Definitely. And it talks about Big L's importance, too.
Big L, the rapper.
Yeah. Claims Big L put Jay-Z on, basically gave him his start. Thus, Jay-Z was supposedly the last person to see Big L alive.
Oh, wow.
And the source makes a direct, pretty stark claim that Big L's death made it possible for Reasonable Doubt to live.
Implying Jay-Z's debut album success was directly linked to Big L being gone.
That's the heavy implication presented in the material, yes. And weaving through all this is just this really strong, often very critical view of Jay-Z from the source speaker.
How so?
Jay-Z is described as, quote, the most shameful thing I've ever done by the speaker, calls him a culture vulture.
Culture vulture.
Yeah, paints him as someone who took important cultural moments or contributions and kind of kept them hidden, didn't give credit where it was due, appropriated things. It gives a lot of context to the overall tone of the material.
Okay, so stepping back from all these specific, often intense claims, the material also suggests this whole Jay-Z moment, this crack in the armor. It might actually be sparking something bigger.
That's right, a potentially more meaningful conversation within hip-hop culture itself.
Because hip-hop, for so long has had this image of toughness,
Right.
invincibility, the Joy 8 mentality, never show weakness.
Exactly. But the sources really hammer home the point that, look, these artists are human. They face insane pressures.
Right.
It mentions examples like Young Handsome talking openly about depression or Kanye discussing his bipolar struggles. Suggests it's part of a maybe slow but growing trend of artists showing some vulnerability.
And the idea presented in the sources is that if Jay-Z, Mr. Control himself, can show that kind of raw emotion, it's like the mask is finally falling off for the whole scene.
Yeah, framing it less as just celebrity gossip and more as a potential signal, a signal to other artists, maybe even fans, that perhaps, it's okay to not be okay.
So maybe a turning point.
The material definitely suggests it could be a shift where maybe more rappers feel they can be real about what they're going through.
Although it does admit some people won't like it.
Oh yeah, it acknowledges the old heads, as it calls them, might still see vulnerability as weakness, but it suggests a definite shift is happening regardless, that mental health is becoming slowly but surely less taboo.
So if Jay-Z's very public moment helps push that conversation forward, shines a light on the person behind the persona,
Maybe, according to this material, that's actually a good thing for the culture. That's certainly the perspective offered here. A necessary, maybe even positive side effect.
well, it's definitely clear from digging into your source material here that there is, as one part puts it, a lot more to this than meets the eye.
For sure.
And it doesn't feel like the story's over, does it? The
Okay.
source material suggests the streets are still buzzing, hints that there's something cooking behind the scenes.
Yeah, it leaves you hanging a bit. Which leads to a final thought, maybe. Given everything this material lays out, the incredible pressure, the public image, these unexpected moments where the facade cracks, what does it actually mean when someone who built an empire on absolute control shows that kind of raw, unfiltered emotion? Does it make you rethink success or authenticity? Or just the sheer weight we put on public figures? And if these sources are right, that this is just one piece of a bigger story, well, what could the next chapter possibly hold?
Definitely leaves you thinking. A lot to chew on.